Well, good morning. How beautiful it is to be in beloved community with all of you. And we're going to dive in today to really reflect on and honor Rabindranath Tagore, a prolific polymath and poetic luminary. And today we will have the opportunity to celebrate the creations and wisdom of this wonderful human being and the legacy that he has gifted all of us. So the letter of the day for those who watch Sesame Street is the letter P. And I chose this letter because Tagore, Rabindranath, whose family often called him Roby or Robbie, both as a loving term, was really a polymath, a poet, a philosopher, a painter, a playwright, a performer, a promoter of social reform. He was a pioneer in education and just all around pretty phenomenal. You talk about multi-talented. This was Tagore. And I ask a question for everyone to contemplate for a moment to ground us, and I'll connect this back into Tagore's life. But if you could live somewhere else for a year, where would it be? If you could live somewhere else for a year, where would it be? And maybe at the end of the service, you might want to share with each other or even put it in chat as well. And I asked that question because Tagore, over the journey of his lifetime, came to really believe he was a citizen of the world and that we all are. And in fact, he would spend much of his life fighting against nationalism, speaking about how when we are focused only on nationalism, we forget our global humanism. And so, one of the things Tagore did is he made it a point in his own journey to try to travel. And even when he couldn't travel because of health challenges, he said we can all travel thanks to books, right? To learning, to be able to even share stories with people around us who may be from different cultures and have different lived experiences. Of course, through technology, we also have that gift to connect now. And I love that Mosaic, uh, takes advantage of the beautiful technology to connect us, right, from all over. What a joy that is. I know I'm happy today because my Amma is able to come and join us as well, and lives up in Virginia. A legacy that flows on. So, Rabindranath Tagore was born on May 7th, 1861, in Kolkata, formerly known as Calcutta. So, many of the Indian states, we have reclaimed names that were changed by the British back to original names. Rabindranath was multi-talented, a trailblazer, the first Asian and person of Indian descent, but first from the Asian continent to win the esteemed Nobel Prize in literature. So he was a Nobel laureate. He spoke at the World Parliament for Religions 2 times, which is pretty extraordinary. He also has this legacy that continues to live on in such beautiful ways through national anthems. He, in fact, composed the national anthem of India, Jana Gana Mana, and later today we will get to hear that. He composed the national anthem also of Bangladesh. He also influenced the anthem of Sri Lanka. So his poetry really transcended boundaries in so many ways. In 1940, he received an honorary doctorate from Oxford University. He would pass away from prostate cancer in 1941 at the age of 80 in his childhood home, as he wished to be at the age of 80 in Kolkata. And he would be come to known by many, many beautiful, loving names, including Gurudev and the Bard of Bengal. And here are some words by Tagore that I love. This is called My Song. This song of mine will wind its music around you, my child, like the fond arms of love. This song of mine will touch your forehead like a kiss of a blessing. When you are alone, it will sit by your side and whisper in your ear. When you are in the crowd, it will fence you about with aloofness. My song will be a pair of wings to your dreams. It will transport your heart to the verge of the unknown. It will be in the faithful star overhead when dark night is over your road. My song will sit in the pupils of your eyes and will carry your sight into the heart of things. And when my voice is silenced in my death, my song will speak in your living heart. And I love this, these words that were quite visionary, but I also think speak and reflect to his life, because his song certainly continues to speak forward in many living hearts and also across disciplines from a multidisciplinary perspective. Now, Tagore was an educator. He was powerful in terms of his educational journey. And when he was very young, he was very lucky. He grew up in a very privileged lifestyle and a house that was surrounded by so many books, libraries. His great grandfather was an industry, really businessman. His own father was quite a sage. In fact, people called him Maharishi, the sage, right? And he would grow up learning always. He had a private tutor where he learned physics, chemistry, mathematics, but also the arts, poetry, and literature. And as he learned, he found this deep, undying curiosity that led to more learning. And he would say the highest education is that which does not merely give us information, but makes our life in harmony with all existence. Now, one of the things he would do is in his lifetime, he would question many of the traditional modes of education. He would look back later in life and say he was very thankful as a young man to have had the opportunity to be educated, but he really did not find the education mechanism of being locked inside and forced to study for hours and hours to be healthy. And he would say that some of the greatest educational moments would be stepping outside in nature, reflecting, being in community. And he would push for holistic education. In fact, so much so that he would go on to open up his own school. A school that in the center picture here, you see a little boy learning from him. And he would really call for interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary education, even liberal arts education, if you will. And he would push to say that learning has to happen from all facets. And in fact, we should also learn outdoors from nature, and multi-generational learning is so important, that elders have wisdom to pass on, that children have so much joy and wonder that constantly teaches us. And so he would push for these different forms of education, go on to even open up a university, which would be one of the first universities to also advocate for women in education. He opened doors, so many doors and windows and revolving doors. Another really cool moment in his life is he had the opportunity to meet Einstein, or as Einstein would say, I had the opportunity to meet Tagore. Einstein was so breathtakingly inspired by this meeting. And oh, if I could just imagine what it was like to be a fly on the wall, to listen to these two brilliant humans exchange conversations, especially around education. And there's a really fun book, When Einstein Met Tagore. It was written by David Gosling, and it's a really cool book if you're ever interested in kind of learning more about this meeting. So Tagore had this really interesting life. When he was 16, at the age of 16, he was brilliant. He was already writing plays that were being performed on stages. At the age of 19, he would actually be called back home to get married. He was 19, close to going on 20, and he would be called back to get married, but it was to a 10-year-old girl, Mrilani. Now, this was common practice at the time, but Tagore pushed back, right? And although he married Mrilani, he would actually spend his lifetime advocating against child marriage. He came back to be a voice to say it is not okay to take young girls and force them into marriage at such a young age, and even to much, much older men. And he questioned this, he challenged this, he spoke up against this. Eventually, even in our Universal Declaration of Human Rights that comes out in 1948, we would start to recognize that child marriage, child exploitation in all forms, from labor to marriage, is wrong. And Tagore's voice would be part of that influence. And here you see Mrilani and him at an older age in the photo where they have a baby. And they would go on to share a very sweet love. They had 5 children, 3 of whom lived through childhood and childbirth. 2 would pass away. And he had a very complicated life before he got married. He shared this kind of uh, divine love with his sister-in-law, which was very interesting. She would end up dying by suicide with opioids, and it influenced and impacted his life very deeply. He also lost his mother around that time, who he loved so much, and the loss put him into a place of such melancholy contemplation. But these parts of his journey would also go on to deepen and enrich his poetry, his vision, his advocacy in his life. So here I share a photograph of the university that he created. Quite amazing, right? And in Bangladesh, if you go, you'll be able to see the university, but also in New Delhi. And to the right, I just wanted to share, right, his university, Visva Bharati, the Golden Jubilee, as it would become to known, was actually put on a stamp, an Indian stamp, as was Tagore, which was quite a special achievement. Now, Tagore, of course, his legacy spans both literary and intellectual worlds. His work transcends national boundaries, and it influences globally art, education, and even the world of math and science. And his poetry collections, this is one of his best ones, Gitanjali, Song Offerings. And this is such a beautiful poetry collection. And the introduction is by W.B. Yeats. And Yeats would go on to say, even at the end of his life, that his most favorite writer of all times was Tagore. Yeats really admired and looked up to Tagore. And Tagore's work, it resonates with so many themes: spirituality, human connection, nature, the divine. And his lyrical style would blend both East and West in this really beautiful, powerful way. In addition, he would explore really, really universal themes like freedom, love, the divine and essence, our creative spirits. What does it mean to be a creative? Really, really beautiful themes. And he would go on to compose over 2,000 songs. He had a very deep interest his whole life around mathematics and science and philosophy. But he would also wisely tell us that we cannot have a world of just math and science, that in fact the arts, all of the arts, must be present because that is how we keep moral solidarity and humanity centered. And he would describe so wisely in some essays how science is so powerful because it can be a force for good or bad. And he would say that the humanities and the arts, in fact, help us to make sure we remember as we are coming up with new innovations and technology and using science for human good instead of harm. So here is words by William Yeats on Tagore's poetry. These lyrics, which are in the original, my Indians tell me, full of subtlety, of rhythm, of untranslatable delicacies of color, of metrical invention, display in their thought a world I have dreamed of all my life long. It speaks to the power of his work. The other thing I do want to point out is one of the powerful pieces of Tagore's poetry is that he would often use mathematical constructions within the poetry itself. He believed deeply in nature, humanism, universalism, the pursuit of beauty and truth, and social justice. Very much aligned with Unitarian Universalist principles. Now, humanism, if you're new to this, has 10 commitments, right? You've heard of the 10 commandments. In humanism, there are the 10 commitments. And the commitments are empathy, critical thinking, ethical development, peace and social justice, service and participation, altruism, humility, environmentalism, global awareness, and responsibility. And all of these really don't exist in silos. They're kind of intersected and intersectional in nature. One of the quotes from Tagore that I find myself really looking to him for guidance and wisdom, especially in the landscape of the world that we are living in now and our national time, where this current administration is abusing power in many, many ways. And we see this also in our state where many of us live in Florida as well. But Tagore says nationalism is a great menace to the world. It is the particularism of the human mind, which is the greatest obstacle to the realization of human unity. And he says, when we start to create systems of superiority and hierarchies that are built on falsehood, because Tagore would argue at the end of the day, we are all human. We come birth into the world, all of us with heartbeat, with lungs that need air. And all of us have needs. In fact, one of his short stories that I love, he actually, he has many stories that are great, right? Many, many stories that are great. The Kalabiwala, just so many stories. But one of them that I love, he talks to how even an empire who has all these riches, right? And a king who is so rich thinks that he is on top of the world. But many times he is actually shackled by that wealth, especially if he is greedy, and especially if he tries to take the wealth and take his power and abuse it over people. And that in that sense, a farmer who may be on land may be much wealthier if he knows how to love. And he brings these concepts into space and time for us. And I think we can learn a lot, especially right now. Now, I also love his art, and I want to share that Tagore to me is an inspiration because he always loved to doodle and loved to create, but he never really dived into creating art until he was in his 60s. He was around 63 years old when he started creating art, really creating art. One of the pieces called Head Study by Tagore is an ink wash on paper. It is at the National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi. And I really love this. He has this kind of mathematical construction of a head, right, using geometric shapes. And inside of the head He has such beautiful, beautiful depictions of both windows and bookshelves, right? Bookshelves are doors. So I think about, Jane, of course, will appreciate the books, the libraries, and he would call, in fact, libraries sanctuaries, temples. He would say our libraries are some of our most sacred spaces, right? And so he has this kind of head study. He also has a nature meditation here. And you can see this kind of meditative bird, if you will. And I love a lot of his art. I picked this one. It kind of almost looks like a Florida bird in some sort of abstract way, which I thought was fun. One of my favorite pieces is Untitled by him, 1930. It's a blue wash on paper. I find a lot of comfort and calm in this piece. I think of it as almost like an ocean wave. I just see water, I see movement, dance, and I love this piece. And then a self-portrait that he did in 1940, closer to the end of his life. And I think that's really powerful. And here's a lithograph and drawing at the Museum of Art in Kolkata, that holds this piece. So more words by Tagore. The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is in the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth, in numberless blades of grass, and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. He was a beautiful writer, very descriptive, brought in nature into a lot of his work. Leave this. And this is a powerful piece. He talks a lot in his work about the hypocrisy of faith, and he questioned many religions, right? And called on us to question and to make sure that we are living our values. Leave this chanting and singing and telling of beads. Whom dost thou worship in this lonely dark corner of a temple with doors all shut? Open thine eyes and see thy God is not before thee. He is there where the tiller is tilling the hard ground, where the pathmaker is breaking stones. Put off thy holy mantle, and even like him, come down on the dusty soil. And there's a lot here to unpack, but he really was calling on a lot of very, very rich, ornate churches and temples that wouldn't open their door to people who were in poverty. And he said, there's hypocrisy there, right? If we are faithful people, come back down on this dusty soil and remember we are one. Remember to stand up against injustices like poverty, because that is faith. Another one of my favorites, and I know we're in National Poetry Month this April, and this is perhaps one of my most favorites, and my kids agree with me. Both my son, Valen, and my daughter, Ramila, love this poem. Poems on Time. The butterfly counts not months, but moments, and has time enough. Time is a wealth of change, but the clock in its parody makes it mere change and no wealth. Let your life lightly dance on the edges of time, like a dew on the tip of a leaf. And he would go on to tell us it's in the moments. That's, time. And in fact, it's not just about the breaths we count, but the moments that are breathless. And so no matter how short or long our life is lived, we can all create and cultivate those moments. And here he is with Mahatma Gandhi. They were very interesting. Their relationship, I'm writing about it now. It was one of the most fascinating journeys because they had a lot of alignment, like against anti-colonialism, for instance, and freedom and liberation and satyagraha or love force. But they also had deep conversations where they agreed to disagree. And it ended up pulling and stretching these two men their whole lives as pioneers and advocates and voices. I want to pause now and I want to see if my Amma, I'm calling you on the spot, Mom, but you're here. So I wonder if you could sing and gift us the Indian national anthem that Tagore wrote, if you would be willing to unmute and sing.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलसि तरंगा तब शुभ नामे जाहे तब शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगल नायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
That was beautiful. Thank you. I offed my slides for a minute to clap. Thank you. All right. Thank you. And so yeah, his poetry was musical, right? So much so it would capture countries, right? And people. Now, he was a world traveler. I started today by asking where you would want to live. And, you know, Tagore, one of his favorite places of all the places he visited was the country of Hungary. He loved the country of Hungary and its people. He was actually going there for a festival, a conference in Budapest and in Hungary, where he got very sick and ended up with cardiac heart issues. And he would end up staying in a hospital in Hungary for quite a long time and get to know its people. And he spent time there. And he was so grateful for the country of Hungary. Before he lived, he actually planted a beautiful tree. And he said, there are many gifts we can give and give each other, but I want to give you a living gift. So it lives on and lives forward. And so by that tree, there's actually a statue. If you ever go to Hungary, you can visit. And on the sign, beautiful words, when I am no longer on this earth, my tree, let the ever renewed leaves of thy spring. And it says, murmur the way farther, the poet did love while he lived. And it was just a beautiful honoring. And Hungary has a lot of beautiful spaces that honor Tagore. And Tagore would spend the end of his life just also talking about what a beautiful country Hungary was. So I think that was lovely. And it also speaks to his ability to intersect, right, the global stage and impact the global stage. He really would talk about the power of creativity, the unity of mind and heart. These are some of his life lessons, but especially spirituality and how we have to make an effort to take false lines of a map and erase them. False lines of segregation in communities and erase them. And make time for stories and love and people, which you all do every Sunday. And I'm so grateful for that. So I'll end today with a poem that I have written in honor of Tagore, and I hope you enjoy it. I have two poems, and I'll email the other one because I don't want to keep you here all day. And I know I have Girl Scouts going on later today, but I'm going to share with you this one, and then I will email Judy the other one. Or if we have time, I can share. In the quiet of early morning, when sun whispers its first light through the rustling leaves of banyan trees, you are there. Oh, Tagore, not yet, just a name. You are a voice that rises in the wind, weaving through the fabric of the world. You tell us to see patterns, hidden in the spaces between stars. You are a geometry of thought that dances in our minds, like notes in a forgotten song. You are numbers in our language, the rhythm of the heart, a pulse that echoes through the verses of Gitanjali. You are a hymn to the unseen, the infinite. Your eyes hold wisdom that draws no boundaries. Between logic and love, between reason and the divine, You see symmetry in silence. Every broken part, your truth reminds us that we come out of the womb whole. In the sweep of your brush, the colors of humanity bleed together. Your words, both the soil and the seed, your thought like rivers, carrying the burdens of our hearts into a distant sea. A poet, a mathematician, a human. You lived both mind and soul, fusing the abstract with the tangible, finding beauty in equations and hope in every line that you wrote. And now, here we speak your name, not just in reverence, but in understanding that in your wisdom, we see the world unfold, the path forward, unbroken, whole, reminding us that we are all human, reminding us that the most powerful book we can write is one together, one written with, in, and for love. And I have another one that's short, so let me see what time it is. Got to keep track of my time. I love when I come here because you all inspire me and I feel I can show up authentically and share. It's a gift. So this one is called Tagore, A Song of Two Souls. In the quiet corners of Bengal's heart, in the quiet corners of Kolkata, a child was born with both rhythm and thought. His fingers danced on the keys of the world, unraveling numbers and weaving soul, a mathematician's mind, a poet's dream. The universe unfolded vast and wide, and in its folds he found patterns divine. A scholar's gaze, he saw truth in dark, in symbols, in stanzas, in logic, in art. His genius a bridge between earth and sky. Words were his canvas, numbers and love his guide, a mathematician, yes, but a poet alive. He saw in each curve a metaphor bright, in each equation the pulse of a song's flight. His pen stitched the world with delicate grace, from Sanskrit verses to Bengali rhymes. He spoke in melodies transcending time. But beneath his verse there lay a mind. There shaped the edges of space and light where theories and lines would dance and intertwine. He wrote a love that could never decay, but also truths that the stars would relay. In the rhythms of math and poetry's flow, he found the secrets that few would know. Both lover and sage, a poet's embrace. Rabindranath Tagore, a name like the wind that carries the wisdom of old and new akin, in the realm of numbers, in the beat of his rhyme. He shaped the world, measured and sublime. A genius, a poet, forever entwined. Tagore. Thank you for letting me share those as we are in National Poetry Month. And I'll end with his words. You can't cross the sea merely by standing and staring at the water. He had moral courage. He told us all to also cultivate even when the world is broken and heavy and sad, to cultivate spaces of joy. Namaste. Thank you all for being who you are and for having me and my most beautiful Amma, who is my forever teacher, on today.